Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a fantasy movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie VIKINGDOM. Now, VIKINGDOM is actually a film that was produced in Malaysia with a Malaysian director and obviously based on Norse mythology but with an English-speaking cast, for the most part anyway. And it's basically a film that's very much in the style of the kind of the 300 film and the kind of Spartacus TV series, but obviously with a considerably low budget. Now, I have to say that the look of this film is fairly sort of striking, be it in a positive and negative way. A lot of the kind of the effects are obviously done on green screen and kind of it's very much over stylized. So but it's not got quite the kind of the sort of post production, say, like the 300 film has. So it kind of looks a little bit cheap in a lot of places, I have to say. Now, I always try and judge a film based on the budget and what it is, what it can afford to do. I have to say though, there is a lot of effects and a lot of sort of visual stuff going on here. So I think they probably stretched the budget very well, I have to say, considering it is fairly low. However, it does still look quite cheap on screen, I have to say. The colours are very kind of, in some places they'll be kind of muted, and the other places they'll be very vibrant. So it has a definite kind of comic book look to it. I also think it looks a lot like Skyrim, if you've played that. Obviously being sort of based in Norse mythology, a lot of it is kind of snowy and kind of a wintry feel to it. And where it is kind of a lot shot on green screen and a lot of, you know, people sort of acting on green screen, it does have that very much like video game sort of feel to it. So the main character is played by Dominic Purcell, probably most notably known for his role on Prison Break. And he plays a character called Eirick. And he's kind of this Viking, this noble Viking warrior who's killed and brought back to life at the beginning of the movie. Now, this film has been criticised for being anti-Christian, and the kind of the premise of the film is you've actually got Thor, who is not anything like you've seen in the Marvel films. He's actually the bad guy in this film, and he's basically a kind of a god who has come down to Earth to basically ultimately destroy Christianity, because so many sort of humans are sort of switching over to basically sort of, you know, Christianity, and he kind of wants the you know, the gods of old, ultimately the gods of Asgard, to be the only true gods. So his aim is to kind of pretty much wipe out sort of Christianity. So there's been a bit of an uproar how this is kind of a bit more of a kind of anti-Christian message in here, but it's really just a kind of a premise to have all this kind of action. I wouldn't sort of get too nick it in a twist about that, if I'm completely honest with people, because it really is just you know, a backdrop to have this kind of action take place. And what you've got here is Eirick basically sort of gathering up a variety of different warriors, including this kind of this slave Chinese guy who's kind of this martial arts master. He's kind of his best pal Sven, who's kind of like this football hooligan Cockney Viking. You've got a female sort of warrior and a kind of a whole bunch of other sort of variety of different kind of Viking types, and they go on a quest. Partway through the quest, Dominic Purcell's character has to go into a kind of hell dimension, Helheim I think it's called, to kind of retrieve this horn, which is, he's been told by these kind of disco looking other gods, this is the only thing that can actually defeat Thor. So he sort of travels down to this sort of dimension and faces this bizarre creature, which I'll come on to again in just a second. Anyway, and ultimately this kind of leads to an epic battle towards the end of the movie and the inevitable face down with Thor himself. So like I said, this is kind of a, you know, a low budget film, and obviously you can kind of tell every penny that they've kind of got on this movie has gone into kind of making the look of this film. However, I think maybe some of the money could have been spent in other places. I actually did kind of like this film, but it has got some serious problems with it. For a start, the actual acting is pretty wooden across the board. Dominic Purcell has never been known for a particularly strong actor. He has had a couple of decent roles, you know, recently that he's done quite well in. But I have to say, this one he's pretty flat. And isn't really kind of, it doesn't seem that he's really putting all that much thought towards it. Or maybe he just kind of thought this was kind of just a dumb action role. I didn't really feel like he had to sort of do much to it. I have to say, the guy who plays Thor, whose actual real name is Conan, which I kind of liked. And you may have recognised him. He was the Mountain in the first series of the Game of Thrones TV series. He makes an pretty impressive Thor, and I have to say, visually, he kind of looks quite good. He does come across as a very kind of comic book villain. He's kind of got like a voice like Darth Vader, but nevertheless, he kind of looks like an imposing force. Now, it's quite a long film. It's nearly 2 hours long. Quite a lot happens. As I say, he goes down to hell, and where he kind of fights like an army of kind of like zombies basically. And this really strange looking, it's meant to be like a giant dog, but if you can imagine, almost like a T-Rex. But the head of this thing is so out of proportion with the rest of its body, it looks really weird. But you can imagine that the body of a T-Rex, but with a head about 10 times the size like it should be, it just looks very strange. Very strange choice. I think that would have been better just to kind of cut that whole bit out. It just looks really crap, if I have to say. And, you know, if you're kind of one of those people who don't really won't consider the fact this is obviously a low budget film, there's lots of instances where these sort of effects do look quite cheap, especially where you've kind of got all these kind of Vikings and attacking like castles, and it's clearly they're obviously fighting on a kind of green screen. This is going to be a bit of a kind of another sort of like thing that kind of bugged me with this movie. Now, I've mentioned obviously some of the costumes are kind of a little bit garish, but they needed to spend a bit more money on wigs. Now, this might sound like an odd criticism, but my God, some of these wigs look so terrible and so blatantly fake. I think they should have just been better off having people's natural hair and just have short hair on a lot of these people. Dominic Purcell looks okay. I think that might be actual, or just hair extensions at least. But a lot of these characters have these really fake-looking wigs, and all you do is simply just look at these damn wigs, and it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. So yeah, a bit of it might sound like an odd criticism, but it's so distracting. The music I didn't think was particularly good as well. We have the kind of the theme music to begin with. You think, oh God, you know, this just sounds so it's not what you want to hear in this kind of film. But, you know, overall, I have to say, I think they did fairly well in regards to sort of stretching the relatively meagre budget to try and make it sort of a kind of a visually sort of stunning film in some places, considering the budget. And I have to say, some of the stunt work was really good, especially from the kind of the Chinese slave character called Yang. You know, he's got some sort of fantastic fight choreography, and there are some decent action sequences here, I've got to say. And there are some aspects, like I said, I mean, I thought Thor looked fantastic, and then the actual kind of the end confrontation between Thor and pretty much the whole gang of Vikings, I actually thought was really, really good. I believe this is actually meant to be the first of 3 films. I'm not 100% sure if that's correct. We'll see how well it does, obviously. I think, you know, money could have been spent better in other places to make this film maybe a little bit kind of less so on the kind of the stylized stuff, and maybe try and make it a little bit more realistic. The main issue I think here is obviously I don't think people are taking it too seriously, and there is a fair bit of jokes in it, but nevertheless it kind of comes across as it's basically a kind of cartoon, so it kind of makes it seem fairly juvenile. So there's kind of there's a lot wrong with it. I have to say there are some enjoyable things. So I'm just going to give this one a flat 5 out of 10. So pretty much average. So what are your thoughts on it? Leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.